Interest rates have been rising, and if you've been thinking about waiting to invest until rates are as high as you think they're going to be, is that a good strategy? Well, I'm going to answer that in this video, so stick around and we will get right to it. So as rates are going up, does that mean I need to wait? Because if I'm getting, say, 5% now on a CD, what if they go up to 7% a year or two from now? I'm actually going to take you through an example where I lay out 3 scenarios on a $100,000 CD. I'm going to show you what it looks like months down the road and how long it would actually take you to catch up versus if you had started with your original amount of money at the original interest rate. And I'll take you through a scenario on why it's not a good idea to wait. And as always, if you derive any value from this, I would appreciate it if you would take some time to subscribe to my channel. I have new videos coming out all the time on these types of topics, and I appreciate your support. So let's take a look at this example that I have here. I have a $100,000 CD at 5%. I'm using that number because that's about where rates are right now, and you see the breakdown on what that's going to do over the next 12 months. So I have it at 5%, I have it at 6%, and I also have it at 7%. And you see the 12-month breakdown of each one of those. And so the scenario that I wanted to look at is if today rates are at 5% on a CD, and then rates are going to climb up, how much do I lose or how much do I gain if I go ahead and invest $100,000 right now at 5% versus waiting until they're at 6 or 7%? So if you invest $100,000 in a 5% CD, 6 months later, this is what the value of that CD is going to be. So the term of the CD doesn't matter. I'm just taking you through what it looks like given a certain length of time in comparison. And let's say 6 months later, CDs are at 6%. So they've gone up by a whole percentage point. So if you take that same $100,000 and invest it, and then 6 months after that, you see the value of the 6% CD up against 12 months later from your original 5% that we looked at. And let's say you wait 6 months and invest in a 7% CD. I show you what that's going to look like after 6 months as opposed to the 12-month mark on the other CDs. So one thing that I found interesting in doing this is that if you compare a 5% and a 6% CD and you invest in the 6% 6 months later, it's going to take 30 months for that 6% CD to catch up to the 5%. Now, as rates are changing, that may not be a good idea to get that long of a term, but that's how long it takes to make that up. If you invest your original amount in a 5% CD and then rates jump up to 7% after 6 months, and then you invest in that, the difference there, it actually takes a full 22 months for that 7% CD to catch up to that 5% CD you had originally. So I'll say all that to illustrate, if you compare the two, unless this is a long-term deal and rates are continuing to rise, it actually makes sense to go ahead and invest your original amount now and then not wait, because you lose the buying power initially and it takes a while for that money to be made up versus what you would have had off the long-term one. And so since it took so long for those higher CDs to make up ground on the 5%, I decided, hey, what does it look like at 10%? So let's look at that. Let's say a 5% CD, 6 months later, you invest in another 10% CD, and it actually takes that one 6 months to catch up to the original 5% one. So that one makes a little more sense, but let me ask you a question. What are the odds that the rates are going to double on a CD in a 6-month time frame? If that happens, there's actually a lot more going on than what you need to worry about on your CD rates. But the way rates rise, in fact, if you look at this chart here, you see when prime rate does go up, it tends to go up, at least over the last year, the Fed would raise it at 0.75% at a time, and then more lately at 0.5 or 0.25. And then in the last few months, from the time of this video, they haven't raised it at all. Now, granted, the deposit rates aren't directly tied to what the prime rate is. That's more of a lending rate. But they do have an impact, and so deposit rates tend to go up as prime rate goes up, but it's not an exact number. Like if the prime rate goes up 1%, your deposit rate is going to go up 1% immediately. That's actually the loans that are going to go up, but they do correlate. So deposit rates are going to be higher after that period of time, but it's not an exact science. And so I say all this to say that if you are sitting on some money and hoping that the rates are going to continue to rise and you're waiting to invest it, you're actually hurting yourself by waiting. There's not going to be that big of an increase for it to make sense for you to wait. But now another thing that you can do if you don't want to put all your money in at the 5% is you can do what's called laddering. That's basically stacking different types of CDs or different lengths of CDs over a period of time. So you could take advantage of, say, every 6 months, every year of what rates are doing at that time. And a lot of people do this strategy, and it makes sense in a lot of cases. I'm showing you what it looks like if you wait and what you're actually losing and how long it takes to make up that ground just in this scenario. So I hope that convinces you, don't wait, go ahead and get in the game. As of this video, in the end of 2023, prime rate's probably not going to go up anymore, maybe one more time from what the Fed has indicated, but more than likely it's not going to continue to climb. So even if what's happened in the last 18 months, if you look at what the rate has done, with the increase that has had, it's probably never going to be a scenario where it goes up that much, that fast, and it still makes sense for you to go ahead and get in the game now as opposed to waiting. So more than likely, there's never going to be a scenario where it makes sense to wait 6 months, to wait a year for you to invest in a fixed product, because it's going to take so long to catch up ground. So I hope this helps answer that question. I get asked a lot on my job. If you got some value from this, I, again, hope you take the time to subscribe. This is Fellowship of the Frugal. My name is Daniel, and I thank you for watching.